thank you to Nicholas, Sharon and Paul for the opportunity to speak to you all today, and to the people online in Queensland. Hopefully we can be there next year. I've got a lot to say, so I'll be going quite quickly. You can read the disclaimer online. This will be on the ASX and also on our website. We consider ourselves to have been a first mover in the STAVELY belt in Western Victoria. At the time, Victoria on the Fraser Institute rankings of exploration destinations probably ranked somewhere between Kazakhstan and Niger. So it wasn't exactly a hotspot destination. We managed to pick up quite a substantial ground position, so we pretty much dominate the belts that we want to be in. Notwithstanding that David Flanagan's presenting after me and he's got a bit of another belt as well. But we have been a committed explorer. I think in Nicholas's opening remarks, he mentioned that STAVELY was the only resource IPO in 2014. It was a bit of a bleak market. Since that time, we've been drilling pretty much ever since, and there was a seminal moment in September 2019 when we finally hit some high-grade copper at the Cairns lode, and we've been drilling that out in a resource drill out ever since. We've had a little bit of a blockage in terms of land access south of the railway. I'll talk about that, but we have now got in place a legal agreement providing access to our drill rigs, so we'll start with 4 drill rigs from the 1st of December this year to complete that resource drill out. And there's not many holes to go, about 16 or 20 holes to be done, and then the resource will come out. But it is a new style of mineralization, and that probably explains why this prospect, although it was identified in the early 70s, really wasn't well understood even by companies like Rio Tinto, Newcrest, North Limited, etc. Until we did quite a bit more drilling. We had some clever consultants working for us, and we figured out that this was a different style that has ever been seen in Australia before. It's a magma Arizona or Butte, Montana style of high-grade lode system. Having said that, and I'll be talking more about this today, is the multiple discovery opportunities. We've been singularly focused on the resource drill out at Cairns, but the discovery opportunities in our wider package are immense, and I'll go through some of those with you today. But we're well funded. We'll complete the resource drill out, we'll complete the scoping study before we have to come to market sometime mid next year. Just the corporate slide, not too much to see here. The share price is recovering. It has been a bit of a quiet time given that we had a wet winter in Victoria this year. Not much drilling news flow recently, but we're just about like a coiled spring to bounce into action on the ground as soon as we can as things dry out there. I might point out, sorry, just to go back, recently we got a new addition to our board, Rob Dennis, a very experienced mining engineer, very good executor of development projects, and a real addition to the board in terms of his experience. So as I say, we had a prominent ground position in Victoria, about 3 hours west of Melbourne. It really wasn't well known as a porphyry potential area before we moved in there. The GSV, Geological Survey of Victoria, plus Geoscience Australia did some very good work, and hence Ross Cayley, one of the senior geologists, was the reason why we named our discovery the Cayley lode, because of that foundation work that they did. So focusing on Thursday's Gossan, there was a chalcocite-enriched blanket there that was well known, defined primarily by Beaconsfield Resources, whom we bought the project off. It's large, 28 million tonnes at 0.4%, sits between 30 and 80 meters below surface. And so if you think in a rising copper environment, we've got massive leverage to a higher copper price. But we now know that the occurrence of this chalcocite blanket, it doesn't cover the entire porphyry outcrop, which is in the beige here, but it really is a function of weathering of the high-grade veins on the structural margins. So that's what causes the chalcocite blanket, and we were the first to realize that. So we drilled a number of holes in our search for the deep porphyry. That was our thesis as we went into this project. And that really culminated in a 1,800-meter hole, hole number 49. It drilled pretty much due south in that position. In the course of this drilling, we did hit some high-grade structurally controlled mineralization, and one of our consultants, Scott Halley, helpfully suggested that we were a junior company, we couldn't afford to drill a whole bunch of 1,800-meter holes, and perhaps we should look for the higher grade, structurally controlled mineralization closer to surface. And that was the genesis of hole 50, just in here, targeting this structure, and as they say in the movies, the rest is history. It intercepted 32 meters on almost 6% copper and a gram gold and almost 2 ounces silver from 62 meters depth, including quite spectacular 2 meters at 40% copper and 3 grams gold. And those photos that you see in there really demonstrate a bit of the paragenesis of the ore body and the character in terms of bornite, high tenor copper sulfides, and chalcocite. So we've been drilling this out ever since, and this is the drill pattern on magnetics. The ultramafic footwall is very magnetic, so on the contact there to that magnetic body is where the mineralization sits, and you can see that the grid abruptly stops to the south, and that's where we've had a little bit of an access issue, now resolved with an agreement to get on the ground from the 1st of December. This is what it looks like in air photo, and you can see the railway going through the project there and that southern triangular paddock that I've highlighted in red. So that's where we'll be intensely drilling from the 1st of December. That leads into a maiden mineral resource estimate for the first 200 meters from surface to 200 meters depth. We expect that to be complete by first quarter next year, and then the scoping study comes out shortly thereafter. Just to talk about it in terms of scale, strike-wise, we've hit it to the north, hole 73, more of a zinc precious metal sort of a signature, which is typical of these magma-type systems, and then to the south, sat on that southern fence line and drilled under the farmer's paddock and got another 23 meters at over % copper, about 350 meters depth. So we've got 1,500 meters of strike, and it remains open. Interestingly, we also have previous hits at depth of in excess of 1,000 meters, so 1,150 meters in hole 45 we hit on another structure. So it's a very tall system as well. This is what it looks like in long section. The large magenta circles are more than the equivalent of 50 meters at 2% copper. So very significant hits. And the system is plunging to the south. Just the labels there are showing the more zinc gold-rich type hits. That's that peripheral signature. And so we've got a genuine plunge to the south, and that's not dissimilar to the magma-type system. Just a couple of drill hits, and really what I want to emphasize here is that although we do get significant widths, 87 meters at 1.75% copper and half a gram gold in this instance, we always have discrete higher grade zones. The basal contact is always well mineralized, and in this instance it's 9 meters at 4% and almost 2 grams gold, and another sub-interval that's 24 meters at 4% is also. That upper interval sometimes moves around, sometimes it's on the hang wall contact, sometimes it's in the middle of the interval, but the basal contact is always very reliable. So that's the stuff that we would focus on in an underground mine. All of that interval would be taken in an open pit, and then the underground would focus on the higher grades. And conveniently, you have mineralized waste as your dilution. This hole was quite a spectacular width of intercept, 144 meters, but it was convenient in that the top part was the chalcocite-enriched blanket, so it's secondary enrichment, not much gold or silver, but copper. And then it goes straight into the kaolin lode with that 85 meters at 1.5% copper and 0.23 grams gold, which is really very vanilla flavor in terms of what this deposit can produce. But typically, again, that basal contact at 28 meters at 3.3% copper, and that's what we'd be focusing on in the underground. And lastly, this is an interesting intercept. It's almost 50 meters at 1.4% copper and over 6 grams gold. There is a late stage epithermal overprint on the system, and so we do get high gold and silver grades over very narrow intervals, and in this case, 2 meters, not very rich in copper, 0.7% copper, but 132 grams gold. So there's some really significant gold grades in here, and we do and are cognizant of really treating this carefully in terms of our resources estimate, not to smear it all over the place. But really the overview is that we've got a very, very tall system. We've got existing hits down to beyond a kilometer's depth in multiple structures. The grades are good, and we've just currently been focusing on the upper portion. So we know that it's over a kilometer deep. We've been finishing out that shallow resource drilling. We're going to extend that at depth later on. We're going to start chasing those other structures as they come into play as an underground. We want to test regional targets, and the porphyry is still down there. And this is what we look at as a development, an open pit, coming off the open pit, a decline, and then accessing multiple structures from an underground. And if you consider that a vertical rate of advance in an underground mine might be 50 or 60 meters vertically per year, and we've got this thing over a kilometer depth, and that's 20 years of mine life. So we've got a bit of an opportunity in front of us. So I've just described the plan, but really I want to launch into the what I see as a very exciting phase for the company, and that's the regional targets. So just going into that for the end of the presentation. On the left-hand side, a bit of a complex evolution of the belt. So it just is by way of explaining how you get these rotated and juxtaposed volcanic belts that are dashed on that magnetic image on the right-hand side. Just to show our tenure position, so I speak of a dominant tenure position, and it absolutely is. We've got big segments of all of those prospective belts, 1,500 kilometers, and importantly, of that 115 kilometers of belt that we've got, only 20 or so kilometers is exposed, and so that's where all the known prospects are. There's another 95 kilometers of strike of a prospective belt that is undercover. That's where our first mover opportunity lives. And I just want to talk a little bit about the Toro West discovery just up here. Just before it got wet in the winter, we sent an Aircore rig up there, and we've hit porphyry-style mineralization under 30 meters of cover. So it's just up in that location. So it's the Aircore is not a definitive test. It just gets us under the cover. It confirms to us that it's a porphyry. Results up to 0.6% copper, and we expect that we're going to have better grades at depth. But it's a kilometer, 1.6 kilometers by a kilometer anomaly at the moment. So very excited about this one. But the key learning, the key takeaway from this is that our geologists have developed a targeting methodology where they can identify porphyry mineralization that is blind, cannot be seen under 30 meters of transported cover. Having then extrapolated that methodology over our entire tenure, we now have 19 targets in the regional exploration program that we want to test in the coming 6 months. We hope to be on the ground later this month to commence this, but it's very, very exciting. We've got an announcement out today detailing all of those targets, and a number of them are high priority given that they have historic hits nearby that go over a gram and in gold and a number of other metals as well. So very, very exciting for us. So the timeline, as I say, we want to get up to Toro West and get some diamond holes into that porphyry discovery up there. And it's really important that people stop thinking of STAVELY as only the Cayley lode. There are so many opportunities out there now. The Cayley lode is of such a grade that it will transport almost anywhere. So if we have a major low-grade discovery, the Cayley will truck to that discovery. There's no problems there. And if you think about the discovery and development of Newcrest in the Cadia Valley, Cadia East, Cadia Quarry, all of those deposits were not going to make the capital hurdle until they discovered the high-grade Cadia Ridgeway deposit. We've done it the other way around. We found the high-grade first. If we find a large low-grade deposit, we have to start turning our thinking on its head, and that the Cayley is the sweet spot we've already found. So just to get back to the thematic, copper is the future-facing commodity. We're in that. We're in a first-world jurisdiction. There's very few quality copper companies coming through with development projects in first-world jurisdictions. We've got one. It's a great opportunity, and we think that it's very much like the young bull and the old bull. And the young bull just wants to focus on the Cayley lode, and this old bull wants to look after those 19 other porphyry targets. Thank you very much.